All right, let's solve a mystery. It's a common kitchen mystery, actually. Today, we're putting on our detective hats to figure out why on earth a cooked beetroot makes such a mess, staining everything that vibrant purple.
I mean, you've probably noticed this, right? A raw beetroot? No problem. You can chop it up, no big deal. But the second you cook it, bam, it's a whole different ballgame. So what gives? What's the change?
While the answer isn't something you can see with the naked eye. It's actually hiding deep inside the beetroot cells, and it's being protected by this microscopic gatekeeper. To crack this case, we have to think small, really small.
Okay, so let's start our investigation. First stop, the crime scene. And in this case, the crime scene is the plant cell itself. That's where all the evidence is hiding.
So check this out. That beautiful purple color, it's a pigment called betylene. It's not just, sloshing around in there. It's locked up super tight inside a little vault called the vacuole. And get this, that vault has double security. It's got two protective membranes, the tonoplast and the cell membrane, acting as gatekeepers.
Now, how good these gatekeepers are at the job all comes down to one word: permeability. You can just think of it like the security system for the cell. If permeability is high, the gates are basically wide open. If it's low, everything is on lockdown.
And that is the absolute key to this whole mystery. If something comes along and damages those membranes, permeability skyrockets, the security system fails, and that purple pigment makes a run for it. And that's the bleeding we see all over the cutting board.
Okay, so we know the membranes are getting damaged. The next logical step for any good detective is to figure out who, or in this case, what, is doing the damaging. It's time for a suspect lineup.
For our investigation, we're going to zero in on two of the usual suspects when it comes to cellular damage. In this corner, we've got temperature, and we're talking the whole range, from freezing cold to boiling hot. And in the other corner, we have alcohol, which you probably know is a pretty common solvent.
Now, every good experiment needs a solid plan, right? You can't just wing it. So here's the breakdown. The thing we're going to change on purpose, that's our independent variable, is either the temperature or the amount of alcohol. The thing we're going to measure to see the effect, our dependent variable, is how much of that purple pigment leaks out. And maybe most important of all are the controlled variables. That's all the stuff we have to keep exactly the same, like the size of the beetroot chunks or how long we let them soak. That's how we make sure it's a fair fight.
All right, plans in place. Let's get to the lab and start gathering some evidence.
So here's how it goes down. First, we cut up the beetroot into pieces that are all the same size. Super important. We give them a quick rinse to get rid of any pigment that's already on the surface. Then, into the test tubes they go, each one in a water bath at a specific temperature. We let them hang out for a bit, then pull the beetroot out. The final step is to measure the leakage, and for that, we use a cool little device called a colorimeter. It gives us a really precise reading of how much purple is in the water.
And honestly, you don't even need the fancy equipment to see what's happening. Just look at this. It's so clear. Over on the left, at the lower temps, the water's pretty much clear. But as you move to the right and the temperature goes up, whoa, it just gets darker and darker. The evidence is literally staring us in the face.
Okay, so the visual evidence is pretty damning, but in any good case, you need more than an eyewitness account. You need the hard data, the forensics. So let's take those colorimeter readings and plot them on a graph to really analyze the clues.
And here we go. So up the side, that's the y-axis, we've got something called absorbance. It's just a fancy scientific way of measuring how much color, how much pigment is in the water. And across the bottom, the x-axis, that's our temperature. And right away you can see, this is not just a simple straight line. There's something way more interesting going on. In fact, if we zoom in a little, we can see the graph really tells a story in 3 parts. Each part shows us something unique about how temperature is messing with that cell membrane.
Okay, let's break it down. Part 1. Below freezing. What happens? Ice. Tiny, sharp ice crystals are literally forming and stabbing through the membranes. Ouch. That causes a huge leak. Then, Part 2. From about 0 up to around 45 degrees Celsius, things are warming up. The molecules in the membrane are getting a bit more energy, they're wiggling around more, and that causes a slow, steady increase in leakage. But then, Part 3. Above 45 degrees, it's game over. The proteins that hold the membrane together just can't take the heat. They start to warp and fall apart. The scientific term is denature, and the whole structure just collapses. And that's when you see that massive spike in the graph. The floodgates are officially open.
So, what about our other suspect? Alcohol? Well, the evidence against it is, if anything, even more straightforward. Look at this graph. It's a straight shot up.
The more alcohol you add, the more pigment leaks out. It's an open and shut case. Suspect number 2 is guilty as charged.
So, we've got our culprits, we know what they do, but for a true detective, that's not enough. We need to know how. We need the motive, the method of attack. To get that, we have to zoom way in, down to the molecular level for the big reveal.
So, the crime scene itself, the cell membrane, is mostly made of this thing called a phospholipid bilayer. That sounds complicated, but just picture a double-decker fence. Each piece of the fence has a head that loves water and a tail that hates it. And because of this love-slash-hate relationship with water, they line up perfectly to form an amazing barrier. It's a really clever design.
And this is where we see their different MOs. Heat, over here on the left, is just brute force. It's like a wrecking ball. It shakes everything so hard that the proteins and lipids just get bashed out of shape and the whole thing falls apart. Alcohol, though, it's more subtle. It's more like a solvent. It sneaks in there and just dissolves the fatty parts of the membrane, making it fall apart from the inside out.
It really boils down to a super basic rule in chemistry. Like dissolves like. You know how oil and water don't mix? It's that idea. The fatty lipids in the membrane are what we call nonpolar. And guess what? Ethanol is also nonpolar. So when they meet, the ethanol just starts dissolving the membrane, poking holes in it and letting all that pigment rush out.
And there it is. Mystery solved. Case closed. The reason your cooked beetroot bleeds all over the place is because the heat from cooking completely wrecks those microscopic gatekeepers, the cell membranes. It lets the pigment escape from its tiny prison. It's not some kitchen magic. It's just pure, awesome biology at work. So we cracked the case of the bleeding beetroot. But in doing so, we uncovered something way bigger, right? A fundamental principle about how fragile cell membranes really are when they face things like heat and chemicals. And that kind of leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? If this is what happens to a simple plant cell, what does that mean for other cells? For all cells?